Modern knowledge, indigenous knowing. So the basic fundamental difference between this is that modern knowledge is about noun, indigenous knowing is about word, fundamentally. So, and I think that perhaps the price we pay for knowing is the loss of being. So I say that today human beings have become human knowings. And see, the biggest handicap in discussing is that textuality creates individualized, independent worlds. What you know will depend on the books you have read. So there will be a fundamental problem in our engagement. What I did was that I have no academic interest. In fact, I talk about de-academizing knowledge. And I have started what I call as an existential research. Because when I went into NID, and before that engineering also, I hated my time there. And when I went into NID, I realized that National Institute of Design, I realized that I'm just being colonized and recolonized and conditioned thoroughly, that nothing authentic in me is left after I got educated. So I began a journey to understand what is to be real, original. So it's very clearly, I am not here to save the tribals. I am here to save myself. So the whole process that I have encountered in working with people is what shifted me in. And so that is the thing that I am doing. And I work with various schools, colleges, artisans, children, different people in this attempt to understand existential aspects of knowing, being, and things like that. So two areas of my research, very focused research. One is the cognitive damages of modernity. To me, modernity is fundamentally a damaging thing that has happened to human beings. Second, I also started to inquire what is the biological basis of being. What is the, beauty, cognition, and value. How is it rooted in biology? How is it all biological beings are rooted in cognition, in beauty? So that has been my area of interest. And I call this a trap of modernity. Let me just take some water, sorry. The trap words of modernity. One, language is the cognitive source. Like we learn the word instead of the world. So that's a very fundamental thing. So what it does is it reconfigures the process of knowing. And I call this the fundamental cognitive damage. That reasoning becomes the tool to understand. Reasoning is basically a communication tool. Reasoning is not a cognition tool. And of course, language is for communication. So, and I also believe that today, Milarepa, this great Buddhist master, has a saying that spirituality is the last ploy of the mind. And I believe that I think it is far more deeper. I believe that understanding is the trap of modern mind. Modern mind thinks it has understood, and that's it. Because you read few books and you think you've understood it. So understanding actually happens at a completely different realm altogether. That if something is hot, it's my body that understands, it's not my mind. Mind cannot understand at all. But mind is today involved in understanding. And the body is completely taken away from the whole, aspects of living. So what has happened is that communication has misunderstood as cognition. Modernity, that is why we talk about orality and literacy. Because we assume that indigenous communities learn through orality, right? Because knowledge is supposed to be transferred, but that is what happens in literate world. So we assume that is how it is happening. So that is because communication is misunderstood as cognition. Creation is completely forgotten. And also there are several words, concepts that are the traps, and the biggest trap today I find is art. Art is a trap because in indigenous society there is no word called art. So I will take 2-3 words like this and then talk about how this is absent in tradition. And so to me, and first I want to very clearly say that there are no villains in this. There is no West, East, there are no villains. Everyone I find is a victim of a condition. Literacy is a condition that created whatever was happening, what is happening in the West. From 15th century when, what you call that, this Gutenberg revolution or whatever you call it, that, then that in 300 years, the whole Europe turned into text. Textualization, I call it textualization of experience. In fact, one of my studies is called Paradigms of Being. That how text, in fact, we are formed. Even though, we are not really, what you call that, human being has to be awakened. Human being is not a finished product. The child needs to be awakened to its possibilities. Even simple aspect like walking has to be learned by the child. If there is no, if you remember, there was this man in our Gramikas who used to limp. His child started limping. Just seeing his father. And this is something that I've been documenting for several years. So what I'm telling is, I know that I don't have much time. So details I go later. So mind is directly engaging with knowledge, eliminating the body. And this is fundamentally what is called as alienation. Alienation is our body and mind are fragmented. We function with the mind. In fact, what I say is that we are physically present, mentally absent. Or the other way around, yes, other way around. And of course, then we create many stories about how to be rooted. And modern mind is continuously constructing its own stories. Because reasoning is continuously being used. Anything you take and then you reason out and say that this is a theory. But the reality cannot be, you cannot have several opinions about one thing, Opinion is the problem of modernity. I think in a tribal society, opinion will be less. Everybody would have a same, because they are not engaging with the mental constructs. So mechanization, yesterday Supriya was talking about this whole, repetition. The idea, because I know that as a designer, I had been told that I am very, very creative and traditional people are very repetitive, they make same pot every day. I find this is an absurd idea that when the modern mind is present, there is no repetition. There is no mechanization. When the mind is absent, like when you use mold, then it is boredom, then it is repetition. But otherwise, every day there is everything, the same thing being done over and over again. It doesn't mechanize because you are fully present to that action. So there's a fantastic quote that Democritus 2000 years ago. The senses speak to the understanding. Poor understanding. From us you took the piece of evidence. With them you want to throw us down. This will be your downfall. So senses have no role absolutely in our modern knowledge system. In fact, we have no role. Somebody will tell you knowledge and we will remember it. In fact, what I say is that, the religious superstition has been changed into scientific superstition. That's all. We just saying the gods. We still are believers. So indigeneity to me is a way of being. So what is this beingness? In this, the idea of learning itself is absent. In fact, there was a 14-year-old girl who was making a beautiful basket, to whom one person came and asked, can you teach us? So she told, I don't know how to teach. So then the question was reframed. Then you teach us how you learned it. She thought for a while and she told, I did not learn. You see? So learning is a very tangible idea, is a very modern idea. That word, of course, that word doesn't exist in there. So you won't, see, when you go to a child, someone's house, and if a child has learned to walk, it's only in modern language that we ask the person that, has the child learned to walk? You see, the moment you translate that into your language, there is no learning. That word doesn't exist. So let me go faster. So culture, culture is an absurd word today. Today what is happening is we are being engineered. So I would propose a new term, engineer, to explain what is happening to us. Culture is something else altogether. It is much more biological, much more dynamic, much more organic, much more autonomous. There is no autonomy today. everybody is being, because education is nothing but conditioning. And I find this very interesting connection between education, development, Christianity, Marxism, all this actually you can put it into one kind of thing. Because everything is text-based. You believe in somebody, there is a preacher, teacher, or a comment or whoever tells you, and then you believe in those few words, And it creates hierarchy. You will see the same structure in all the three, all of this, whether it is development, and everything creates a linear mind. So it is also interesting to see how linear mind is created. What is a mind that is cyclic mind? What is a mind that is linear mind? And how does that language evolve from that? So, so children are the first. I thought I'd just show some. Learning is the nature of life. So, children don't have to be taught. So I have actually documented, I have actually almost 6,000 videos on children. And I have been documenting the play that children do and the toys that children make. In fact, these two ideas are absurd ideas of modernity actually, because children don't need toys. It's a very, very Western or whatever idea that children need toys. And we misunderstand children's play as play and learning is something else altogether. In nature, every kitten, dog, or all these animals in childhood play. Play is the way to awaken their senses, awaken their tools for learning, and also to engage, to connect to the context. And in my study of children's toys, I found that children are actually exploring three aspects of the world. One, how things look like. Second, materiality. What is the quality of material? So when a child sits on a sofa, the child will start jumping. So it's trying to understand what is the materiality of the thing, and the other aspect is the processes. What is the phenomena? So children would make houses. So three aspects of. So what I'm actually trying to say is that indigenous, if children are left alone, this is what actually happens in rural tribal societies. That children, along with the people, create what I call as the existential knowledge. In modernity, we don't understand that term existential knowledge. All kinds of things are learned for, I don't know for what reason. It's so interesting that if you look at cognitive science was invented just a few years ago, 1950s. And it was also invented in mechanical engineering department. So you can see the complete distortion of, the whole, so-called knowledge system of modernity. So these are, just a few things that I thought could be of, no time, so I won't be able to.
Okay.
Other thing is waste. Waste is the, there's no word called waste in tribal society, I mean non-literate communities. So what do they do with these things? So I have documented that, just taking one thing, that it is the, what do you call that, jute, the cement bag, just one thing. Hundreds ways in which people have been, doing all kinds of things with that. A milk bag, I shot it here only, just last visit, I got this. Burnishing they're using in pottery, making a rope, which is tied onto the cow. Then of course beautiful bags through, stitching. They use that cross stitch for that, and of course chatais. And of course there are several such. This is from from here. They have used the small panparak and made a huge basket out of it, big size basket from this small tiny panparak. So I find that this this creativity is the way people live. Creativity is nothing that a modern person has to teach, that our beingness is rooted in creativity. So just I will, point just one more thing and then I will stop because I don't have time. Art, I was talking about art. So I began to really look at, because there is no word called art in tribal societies and nothing called self-expression also. So I began to look at what is this that makes things happen. So I also connect this with this idea of natural ergonomics, because ergonomics is a new, study which I feel is invented to make us sit on a chair or sit on anything and make it feel nice. So I started looking at how people actually sit and do things. How do they sit? How do they, sit together? And I found that in these aspects I find that there's an innate aspect of order and beauty. Order. A need for order, a need for aptness. Because I'm looking at, like hunger makes us, invent cooking and farming and all that. And exactly in a similar way, I feel that there is something that enables us, makes us to organize ourselves and do things, and that is what I'm trying to look at as, beauty. And this is something that you constantly see. So I see this, when two people sit together, they form certain composition. And the third person comes, they reorganize. A fourth person comes, they again reorganize. But the moment you have a furniture kept, if it is heavy, then absolutely no reorganization. So, I know my time is up, just give me one more. He's not creating music. No. So the whole activity of a person, you will find rhythm, you will find the easiest way to do things. Such coordination. Yeah. Okay. Again, I started actually looking at what is the biological basis for our being. So beauty was one, cognition was the first thing that I started looking at. Beauty became the second one. Then I also started looking at conduct, value. How do we actually, then I started, seeing that in animal, of course, I was not just looking at human beings. I was looking at how plants behave, how animals behave. So I found this fantastic video. So, I just would like to tell you that I stopped reading completely. Only then the world revealed it to me. Because what we are doing is we are continuously through reasoning trying to understand the world. And reasoning always misleads you. Reasoning is not a cognitive tool. When I stopped reading completely, my organic biological processes began to function. I began to see, I actually stopped reasoning. And I began to see. And yesterday she was talking about, and other person also talking about, as revelation is actually the normal way of understanding. It's not mysterious. It will seem mysterious today because we don't know what that is. Even intuition, insight, these are not mysterious. This is the way how actually knowing happens in the realm of biology. Only when you go into a textual mode, all these things change, So I am actually hoping that to set up an existential kind of a research, because I believe that in order to make people understand, I need to document and tell people what is wrong with modern education system. I believe that modern education is the biggest crime against humanity. I'm not exaggerating, because I feel that the child, which is truly alive, which is truly connected to the world, which actually learns, you mislead it completely.